How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's me, Rob Marsiglio, sales representative with Keller Williams Referred Urban Realty, out here in Durham region, serving the great people of this area and doing my best to bring you weekly content on this channel about all things Greater Toronto Area real estate. Usually we dive into the numbers, what is happening with months of inventory, things to that effect. But this week's video is super important because there's some new legislation that takes effect on December 1st that is going to change how real estate is done in Ontario. I'm going to bring you three big changes as we switch over from REBA 2002 to TRESA 2002. Again, that's happening on December 1st. The one that you're all excited about based on the thumbnail is probably open bidding. So I promise we will start with that one, but stick with me because there are a couple other big changes that I want to go through later in the video. This is right from the new RICO information guide, which anybody who approaches a realtor will be provided with. It's a 13-page document that kind of outlines the new representation. You're either a client or you are a self-represented party. This is a little later in the package, and it's all about the content of offers or open bidding. It reads, you may have seen articles in the media about open bidding or open offer process. Buyers in Ontario who have made an offer on a property are entitled to know the number of competing offers. Sellers choose how much other information, if any, they want to share about the offers they receive. So that right there, again, up until this point in time, you know how many offers you're up against as a buyer if you're in an offer night situation, but nothing else about the offers. Starting December 1st, we can disclose a little more information. As a seller, you decide how much information you want to share about the competing offers, and you need to do that by providing clear written direction to your agent before the content of any offers can be shared. Personal or identifying information contained in offers cannot be shared. So this is Form 209, the form that as a seller you will have to fill out with your realtor to give them permission to share contents of competing offers with anybody who has submitted a competing offer. So it's the price, the deposit, conditions, closing date. There's also a section for other. So, you can share if somebody's given you a very tight, irrevocable time frame. You're not supposed to share that right now. I know some people do, but that's another example of something you can share. Hey, you've got until tomorrow is when we will have to make a decision. So maybe you have a little bit more time to come back to us with a better offer. As a buyer, you decide whether you want to participate in a process where the content of your offer might be shared with other buyers. Be aware that the seller can make the decision to share the content of offers at any time. You may not know in advance. This is not something that will be mandatory to be highlighted on a MLS listing. You're not going to know, hey, this offer night process is sharing the contents of offers or it's not. It's all up to the seller's discretion. And the seller can really change their mind at any time. They can tell their agent, hey, divulge all this information about offers to competing buyers. But then maybe when they see offers come in, they can backtrack that statement altogether and say, let's not share this information going forward. What are my thoughts on the open bidding process? So how it's presented right now, I don't see it changing much. As a seller, sure, if you've gotten an offer that is maybe higher and above in price than you were expecting, you may want to share that offer with other buyers at this point in time to see if anybody can one up that price. In today's market, where we're seeing a few more low balls, maybe prices aren't going for as high as they were a couple of years back. This might not be a strategy that sellers want to employ. As a buyer, from that perspective, why would you want the contents of your offers being shown to anybody else? In my opinion, it's as simple as inserting a clause in your offer that states something to the effect of, if the contents or substance of this offer is shared with any competing offers, this offer shall become null and void. You can pause the video here to read a clause that a buyer may insert if they don't want the contents of their offer shared with competing offers. Now, monitoring that and proving that the offer wasn't shared is a whole other ballgame, a whole other discussion to have later on down the road. I think there's going to be a lot of further legislation and monitoring that's going to have to come in to really make sure this runs smoothly. But I kind of see this as a bit of a big nothing burger at this point in time. Change number 2 has to do with representation types. And under REBA 2002, you kind of had three different representation types or three different parties to a trade, how you could be represented. There was the client, and a client, in essence, the brokerage and its agents were responsible for promoting and protecting the best interest of their clients. Then there was the customer. This one was a little more murky because you weren't bound to protect the customer's best interest. You just had to provide them with honest service, kind of follow their directions. So the commonly used customer agreements clearly stated that the brokerage was not representing the customer's interest, just kind of carrying out whatever instruction they provided the brokerage. The rarest of the representation types was undefined, and it was a third type of party to a trade that was not receiving services or representation from a brokerage. So it could have been a corporation involved in a commercial transaction, an experienced investor, something along those lines. TRESA 2002 has done something to get rid of that ambiguity between a client and a customer. So now you're either a client, and a client is any buyer or seller who's receiving services under a representation agreement with a brokerage. Any agreement a brokerage enters into with a buyer for the purpose of trading in real estate must include representation in respect to the services being provided. So we can no longer provide service without representing the best interest of whoever we are providing services to. On the flip side of that, the second party to a trade now is the self-represented party. And this is a person who is not under an agreement with a brokerage to receive services through representation. So we can provide services to these people as long as those services are to kind of achieve a goal for our clients. So quick example would be, I have a listing, somebody approaches me to see the property. I'm allowed to provide that service and show that property because it's in the best interest of my seller client. But if I'm pressed for more information as to, what do I think my seller would accept, I cannot disclose anything to the self-represented party. I'd say something to the effect of, we've done our research and we feel like this is an appropriate listing strategy for this home at this time. All in all, I think this change is good because it just does bring some clarity. You're either a client that has full representation or you are not being represented at all. The risks of being unrepresented are all outlined in Rico's new information guide. Again, 13-page document that you will be provided with prior to making a decision as to whether you want to be a client or whether you want to be a self-represented party. The third and final change I'm going to dive into today is the difference between representation under REBA and representation under TRESA. Under REBA, when you are signing up to be represented, you're signing up with a brokerage. And you can see this is from the top of a buyer representation agreement. The agreement was always between the brokerage and the buyer. Here it is in graphical form, a brokerage and all their agents. A client belonged to that brokerage. And under these representation agreements, the brokerage and all of its agents had to promote and protect the best interest of the client. They owed an undivided loyalty to the client, and they collectively represented the client and were considered to have access to confidential client information, in terms of actual personal information about the client or things like their motivation for wanting to buy or sell. That client had the representation of the entire brokerage. Under TRESA, they've introduced something called designated representation. So you can see this is the new buyer representation agreement updated for 2024, coming into effect on December 1st, 2023. You can see there's a new snippet at the bottom here called designated representatives. And that is because it's only going to be one agent from that brokerage, if a brokerage so chooses to use designated representation, that represents a client. And this is highlighted text that's important. Under designated representation, the designated representative has a duty to protect the confidential information of the client. This means confidential info such as the client's motivation to buy or sell and their financial circumstances must not be shared with anyone else inside or outside the brokerage. In theory, this is a change that I do like. I feel like the kind of less people you have that know about your specific circumstances, that's more leverage for you in a transaction. And I also like because it tries to circumvent multiple representation. So under REBA, if you had a representation agreement with a brokerage, there was another client of that same brokerage who had an interest in your property, or you were involved in the same trade, you and another client of that brokerage were offering on the same property, you would enter multiple representation, and the kind of duties, the fiduciary duty or the ability to advise you was kind of lessened because multiple people at that brokerage could hypothetically know about your financial circumstances. Under designated representation, though, you get rid of multiple representation because agent 1 and agent 2 of that brokerage have no idea about the circumstances of their respective clients in theory. Here's the list of some of the risks of multiple representation that these new changes are trying to avoid. So if you agree to multiple representation, the brokerage or designated representative must treat each of the clients involved in an objective and impartial manner. They cannot maintain undivided loyalty to you or promote and protect your interests over the interests of the other client. And they cannot offer advice to you about such things as the price you should offer or accept or terms that should be included in an agreement of purchase and sale. Very quickly to wrap up a few other changes that are going to be happening. So adjustments to information and disclosure obligations to promote clarity and communication. So that's this new RICO information guide that I was talking about. There's new powers and tools to help RICO operate more efficiently and focus its compliance and enforcement efforts where they're most effective. A revamped code of ethics that focuses on ethical obligations, including provisions around conflicts of interest and confidentiality. Then revisions to RICO's discipline committee, composition, and procedures. All in all, as a recap, I don't think we'll know how well this open bidding goes until we've experienced it for a few months. Like I said, as a buyer, why would you want the contents of your offers disclosed to anybody else? If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments below. Change number 2, when it comes to clarifying the difference between a client and a self-represented party, eliminating that customer component. I do like that change because I feel like more clarity in the industry is what is needed. And then when it comes to the change of brokerage versus designated representation, I think that has potential to be a very powerful kind of confidence building tool for consumers, but it all just comes down to how well will that be monitored at the brokerage level. I hope this video has kind of shone some light on the new changes that are coming into effect. Make sure to save it, come back and refer to it. If you have any questions and you are not currently represented by somebody else, I'd love to try and clarify. All the contact info is down below in this video. We'll be back at it again next week with regularly scheduled programming. We will have some TREB numbers for the month of November that come out. Check me out on Twitter to stay up to date on what is happening with the numbers this week. But until we speak again at that point in time, please stay safe and cheers. Hey there, I really appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, I've got another video for you right here on the screen. And, while you're here, maybe just click on my face, subscribe to. I don't want you to miss anything going forward.